This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Nature's super healing.
Nature is super healing. It was so healing for me is that I actually just got certified to become a horticultural therapist.
Caring for aging parents or other loved ones while working, raising children, and trying to live your own life? Wondering how to find the time for your personal health and happiness? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Happy, Healthy Caregiver podcast, the show where real family caregivers share how to be happy and healthy while caring for others. Now, here's your host, family caregiver and certified caregiving consultant, Elizabeth Miller.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Happy, Healthy Caregiver podcast, which is part of the Whole Care Network. If this is your first time listening, welcome. This is a show produced bi-weekly to help family caregivers integrate self-care and caregiving into their lives. Each episode has an accompanying show notes page, so if you would like more details about the topics, products, and resources we speak about, or you want to see the related photos, you'll find the show notes by going on the website, happyhealthycaregiver.com, and underneath the podcast menu, click the image or episode number for today's show. If you're listening from your favorite podcast platform, the link will also be in your podcast episode's description. Join the Happy Healthy Caregiver email list to stay up to date on all the podcast happenings. Every Tuesday, you'll get the weekly roundup, which includes tips under the pillars of happy, healthy, and caregiving, plus upcoming events, special offers, and more. To sign up for the newsletter, go to bit.ly/HHC eNews. For today's segment of what I'm reading, I recently finished a book during my sister's weekend that we took back in September. And this is, by the way, a special weekend. Over 20 years, we've been meeting. First, it was sisters. Then we added first cousins that were like sisters or are like sisters. And then our daughters when they're over 21. We usually go to the beach. We haven't always gone to the beach, but we usually do. And so we were this time. My sister first read this book. It's called Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. And she passed it on to me. And I inhaled it in a little over a day on the beach or poolside, back and forth. And then I gave it to my cousin Jill. The funny thing is that this is actually book 2 in a 2-book series. However, the book stands alone as none of us read the first one, which was called Part of Our World. If you like contemporary romance books by Emily Henry or Ali Hazelwood, you're likely going to like this one too. I gave it 4 stars for just the sheer joy of reading it. Here was my review on Goodreads. It says, great beach read. I flew through this book. I like how the main male character was the one with anxiety and he journaled. There are some potential trigger topics, but the author warns you up front in her author's note. Terrific romantic chemistry. I also didn't read book 1. Not sure if it matters as the story stands strong on its own. So I will link to that in our show notes page. I'll also link to the Goodreads profile if you want to follow me on Goodreads. For this episode's favorite thing, I enjoy supporting small, privately owned coffee shops. The one I frequent now is called Marietta Perks, owned by a guy named Rich, and I come here at least every other week. It's often as a local meetup spot for me to network with another entrepreneur, or sometimes I just need to get out of the house and have a change of scenery. Small coffee shops to me scream community, and you'll see like this one has community. They've got lots of flyers and things on the bulletin boards and ways that they personalize it for our community. I prepped for this podcast at Marietta Perks earlier this week. People were there catching up, studying, and several other entrepreneurs were there crushing their goals. This week, I sipped on a hot green cranberry tea with a splash of local honey that was recommended to me by the barista when I told her I wasn't in the mood for coffee. When is the last time you ventured into your latest local, not Starbucks, coffee shop? They likely could use your support. I'll link to Marietta Perks, the one that I've enjoyed, in the show notes. Before we get into today's Caregiver Spotlight, I want to first shine the light on our episode sponsor, Rare Patient Voice. Do you want to earn cash in exchange for your opinion? Rare Patient Voice, or RPV, helps connect researchers with patients and family caregivers for over 700 diseases and conditions. For patients and caregivers, RPV provides the opportunity to voice their opinions to improve medical products and services while earning cash rewards. Rare Patient Voice, helping patients and caregivers share their voices. If you're interested, join the RPV panel at rarepatientvoice.com/happy healthy caregiver. Let's meet today's caregiver in the spotlight, Lisa Nigro. Lisa Nigro describes herself as an ordinary woman with an extraordinary spirit. Before becoming a full-time caregiver in 2015, she was a community activist that served the poor and undervalued living in Chicago. Currently, Lisa is the full-time caregiver of her adult son, Nick, who on October 31st, 2015, suffered a heart attack at home from a virus and became brain injured and fully disabled. Lisa shares how she is thriving in this new season of life, even with its difficulties and challenges. In this episode, we discuss the parallels of Lisa working with the homeless and caring for Nick, how being nonverbal doesn't mean non-communicative, the challenges in finding quality respite care, gratitude pumpkins, pizza gardens, and a whole lot more. Enjoy the show. Hi, Lisa. Welcome to the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast.
Hi, it's nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. And we've had a multi-year friendship, mostly online, and you're in Chicago. We were talking about how my daughter's in Chicago. So hopefully one of these days we're going to get to meet up in person. I would love that.
It'll be great. Well, we met up in person at the conference when I bought your caregiving jar, which is I know. And what's really great is that I just saw that you have like refills.
Refills.
Because
yes.
the people that I bought it for, they always talk about, but now I'm like, ooh, I need to get a refill now.
Yes, I've even been thinking about doing another refill because I'm a quote person. Like I see things
me too.
that speak to me and I collect them. And I used to refill my sister's jar when I would go see her when she had the reins for mom's care. I would like go visit her and I would stuff more stuff in there. So she would, and then at some point then you forget the original ones and you can just rinse and repeat and do it all over again.
And what is really interesting is, and I'll let you get on with the interview, but what's interesting is that I think this is great for the wider audience. When you do buy that, I bought it for a family who's no longer caregiving, but they still use the caregiving jar.
Yeah, it works but most of my content is, I think, applicable for life. You know, it's definitely caregivers in mind. We all need to be prioritizing our self-care. We all need to know that we are enough. We all need to infuse, some little joy in our day. So I have heard that from other people that they stay subscribed. And listen, the after caregiving ends stage is a very, very true stage for caregivers. Like once you're a caregiver, you're kind of always a caregiver. Like it's never going to leave you.
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, let's get into it. Speaking of the jar, we always kick off some words of wisdom. So let's see what we got for you here today, Lisa.
Okay, I'm excited.
All right, here's what it says. So it's upside down. You can only save the world if you save yourself first.
Oh, that's so interesting that I would get that, right? That's so interesting because who did that quote? Was it anonymous?
It doesn't say. I know
it's
some of them don't.
Yeah, probably.
Anonymous.
Because previously, before I was a caregiver, I was a founder of restaurants for the homeless here in Chicago, which are still existing. They're called Inspiration Corporation or Inspiration Cafes. This is the original name, and they're here in Chicago, and and that was my saving the world moment. But And what's so fascinating is that the lessons that I learned working with the homeless totally blend in with working with my son Nick, who has a brain injury, and that's how I became a full-time caregiver.
How
The thing,
so?
yeah,
Yeah.
one of the things that I find really fascinating is, okay, well, first of all, the fact that people come up to me and used to say to me, I don't know how you do that. When I was working with the homeless, they still say that to me when I'm working with my own family member who I love and adore. That just it always freaked me out. You know what I mean? Like, it freaks me out more now when I'm working with my son who I love. And I'd be like, what are you saying? Is that what you're saying? Like, so what you're saying is that you wouldn't, have unconditional love for your family member. Is that what's
Yeah.
happening? That's the message that I'm feeling. So it's interesting. And then the other thing is the fact that people never believed in the homeless that we were serving, like their stories and their abilities and their, just their
Their
future.
value
Yeah, their
to,
value, their future, all that stuff. It was always like, oh, they were always surprised when they realized, oh, I have more in common with this person than not. And also, I could have been that person. You know what I mean? Like, if someone learns that like a medical thing happened and wiped out all their savings and they became homeless. Drug addiction, obviously, addiction's huge in the United States. And so, that comes on, mental illness, mental
yeah.
health, all that. And so it's the same with caregiving, with Nick, because of his brain injury and because he has a specific anoxic brain injury, which is like a harder brain injury than a traumatic brain injury. I mean, in my mind, just because parts of his brain are actually dead, and then with traumatic, it's more like a swelling and then, healing like that. So with Nick's brain, it has to like reroute, find a new path, and it takes longer. So I always say you climb one mountain when you're traumatic brain injury, but if you have an anoxic brain injury, you're climbing five,
Yeah.
and so it's a longer thing. But that's what I'm saying. Doctors are like, well, I'm not sure I really do that because, like, basically, like, what's his future? And I'm like, oh, no. See, time out. First of all, everyone's valuable from the moment they entered the world. And if we're here supporting and loving him and saying, hey, we're going to be here, we're the people that are going to make this happen. So let's try. And your body always wants to heal, like 100%. Doesn't make a difference what happens. You break your arm, your body's trying to heal. You have a sinus infection, your body's trying to heal with all the stuff that happens. You have a brain injury, your body's still trying to heal. So
Yes.
that's the
And
thing.
he's young, and he's
Yeah,
young, and we continue to find out new things and new treatments. And so
exactly.
like the hope of that. And that question that you said, like, I don't know how you do that. Like, I don't
Yeah,
know that there's ever a good situation where someone should say that. What do you
right.
think?
Yeah,
Like,
right. Yeah.
yeah, like, I don't know.
Yes. And I
It's
understand that other things are harder. Like, people with anoxic brain injuries, a lot of people are failed suicide attempt by hanging or drug overdoses. And I
mm,
understand that their family members will come to this caregiving journey with a different feeling about it. Um, and but it's
and
but
lead
people
us into your story too. Like, I
yeah,
mean, people will want to
what
know.
Nick's different is that his came from a virus that caused a heart attack, which caused him to die at the house. But I was at the house when it happened, and then I
Mm.
did CPR on him with his dad because he was home, which was a miracle. So we were both doing CPR. Obviously, we called the ambulance, and because of his virus that he didn't know he had, because he was just feeling tired. That was the only clue that we had. And he had a little bit of a fever, but it was nothing. He was 23 years old. He's a musician. He's a gamer. He was a young guy that just wants to be,
Typical, yeah.
yeah, just a dude, just being a dude. And so he didn't tell me that he was feeling poorly. The only way I knew was that night before, because he was a gamer. He used to game from like midnight till 3 a.m. with his buds, and but he went to bed at 8 at night or 9 at night the night before this happened, and I was like, that's weird, like something's happening. So in the morning, he said, I just feel tired. And I said, okay. And I took his temperature and I was like, let me make you some soup. Do you want some soup? He's like, yeah. And I gave him some soup. And the minute I walked out of his room, I heard this crazy noise, which I'll never forget. And then he hit the floor and died. And then I walked in his room and said, call 911, and then started CPR right away. But because of that whole situation, they said the stars aligned in a very negative way, and he has an anoxic brain injury from that, because he had another heart attack when we got to the hospital too, on the CAT scan machine, and they kind of call code and they did the same thing and, brought him back. So it was a pretty rough go for Nick.
Traumatic. I mean, and you were there in obviously the front line of it all. Like, how have you dealt with this trauma around that day?
Oh, it's okay, buddy. Nick's here too. Nick's here, and you'll hear him.
He's listening to us.
Yes,
yeah.
And he got.
Hi, Nick.
He just got a little sad just now. Yes, we're having. It's the change of the season, and also this is his season. This is the month that he had his heart attack. October 31st, Halloween.
Wow.
So it's a sensitive time. So what was the question? Do you remember?
The trauma, like, how have you both dealt with the trauma, frankly?
Yeah. So, we are, just head on, basically. I'm one of those people that life happens, even since I was a little girl, not really great things happen to me. And when that happens, I just kind of say, I don't deny what's ever happening. I just go okay, this is happening. I name it. And then I try to solve the situation. So this happened. I knew I was bringing Nick home. He wasn't going to a nursing home, even though that is something that they always ask, they try to promote a nursing home. But I've been around now in the anoxic brain injury community long enough to know that I would have to be off the earth. You know what I mean? I would.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would be the most last resort of last. And, it has been, it's been, I just kind of jump in the deep end and just swim,
Yeah. You're a roll up your sleeves kind of gal.
That's it. I've always been like that. That's exactly right. And that's how I started the Inspiration Cafe. Same thing. I mean, I saw a need. I wanted to do it. I didn't have any education in that at all. I found a book about how to start a nonprofit. I read it twice and started a nonprofit, and it took me a long time. And I also had lots of obstacles doing that, and people didn't believe in me and all the things, right? And then I had to do something very dramatic to have people realize that I was serious. And that's the same thing with caregiving with Nick.
Yeah.
Same exact thing. It's just
was your dramatic thing with caregiving bringing him home? Or
bringing him home. Yeah, even the fact that when he was on a ventilator. And I saw when I watched your podcast, this is a story of other people. This is not my story is not unique, which is annoying also. But so he was in a coma, and an induced coma. They did it so his brain could heal, and he was on a ventilator, and it was that do or die time. And they said to me, you need to go in there and decide what you're going to do. If you're going to stop the machine or whatever. And I was just why is he failing? Is something happening? And as they were saying that, the harvest team, that's what they call them, the people that take your organs, were in the hallway waiting. And I was like, this is a really weird situation. I understand, and I feel for the families that are waiting for something like that to happen, but
then we get back to that value of life.
Yeah,
of thing
exactly. So they said, go in and talk to Nick, and they just said you go in, because they noticed that when I went in to talk to him, his vitals would change, so they knew he would respond to me more. And what they do is they take you out of the coma, they reduce the medicine, and then I looked at him, he looked at me, and I was just like, hey, dude, like this is like, what are we going to do? And he was nonverbal, but Nick completely, yeah, with his eyes, he was like so on point and totally was telling me with his eyes, like, I am not going out. And I think he has a lot of me and him where
Yeah.
he was actually low key though before his brain injury. Like he's low key, but now I realize he's a flippin' fighter like me. I mean, he just never showed it. Like I'm always in your face kind of person. He's not like that at all. He was always low key, but he always got it done, and his friends even told me stories later about like these things that he would do. And I was like, wow, like he is a warrior. And he was just like looking at me like, no, no, no. And I was like, okay, dude, no.
Let's
And I
go.
went back out and I was like, sorry, this is not going to happen. And
I'm assuming your
fair
hubby
enough.
was on the
Yeah,
same page with you.
we talked about it and we were both like, hey, what do we want to do? And it was all up to Nick. If Nick looked like he was like over, he was too tired or whatever, I didn't know how I was going to figure that out either, but I knew this was the right path. And then we reduced the medicine, and then he started breathing on his own and doing the whole thing. And I was just like, okay, so this is it. Now his vessel, his body is different because he has a lot of spasticity in his hands and he's fully disabled and he can't speak. He's still nonverbal, although he expresses himself, and he'll tell me when he's annoyed or sad. Or we also have this code with look up for yes, look forward, or down for no. And he talks to me that way. I also use a board where I have like a choice to look at either thing. He's very, and also he's still mischievous. Like he used to be very funny, and he also still, I'm the mom that used to be like the crazy dancing mom, doing things embarrassing on purpose, you know what I mean, for my kids. It's a funny, he has
part
a
of the fun.
Emily, yeah. And we do things in grocery stores, and when we hear music, and they'll be like, we'll start to dance, just a funny thing. And so I used to do that when he was gaming. I would fly into his room and I'd be like, dude, and I'd like, let's dance, and he was like, no, like
eyes straight ahead.
Yeah, like, no. And so now I do the same thing. Like I'll hear music and I'm like, let's dance. And he'll just seriously look at me like, for real.
Not the mood.
Yeah.
Not the vibe today, Mom.
Yeah.
Yes. No. Well, I appreciate you taking us back there. I feel like people need to kind of, understand that. And I know that, I know you have a care team around you with your husband and hopefully some other folks. Are there other folks that have surrounded you? No. Well, talk a little bit about that. Like,
in the very beginning is yes. And I mean, the very beginning for sure. Yes. And, but just like, if someone had like, my friends who have breast cancer, same story that happens with them, right? So they have breast cancer, they get a rally of people, but if it's a long-term, illness, then people slowly go on with their lives. And also what's interesting, I find that they can't, like, people, well, sometimes I think people start thinking like, oh, this could happen in my life, they don't, almost like you're contagious in a way, I mean, like if this can happen in my life where I'm gonna have to take care of someone, and my message is like, yeah, it is gonna happen in your life.
Oh, for sure, it will happen, people.
Yeah, that's it. And it might not be as dramatic and it might look differently, but it's definitely gonna happen. And so I'm 62 years old, and people in my community, like, they're all retiring and they're like living their like best life and they're traveling and everything. And it's kind of like we don't have anything in common in that place. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it's just interesting how people react. But it's just in anything, like any kind of tragedy, people like rally and then they either freak out or they fizzle out. So this depends.
Because how many years has it been on for your journey so far?
It will be 8 years this
Halloween.
Yeah.
8 years. And so how do you, how have you and your husband, like, how do you kind of still incorporate some of your life?
My husband works full-time at a library. at Northwestern University. And he does that, and I'm the full-time caregiver. And then at night when he comes home, we have dinner together and do the family thing. And then he helps out at that time. Or so we have that. I have not found a caregiver. Like, I've interviewed lots of people, and I've had, a caregiver once in a while in the beginning when he first got injured. But it's really hard to find someone that is not afraid of brain injury. And also, it's because he's nonverbal. People I don't know if they get frustrated or they don't know how to react, because people want a conversation, they don't like that awkward silence, but I'm like, there's so many different ways to communicate. That's the way to learn. And also, you could show things to Nick all the time, and he'll engage, you know what I mean? Like music or a movie, or like a joke, you know what I mean? Like any kind of like stuff like that, he'll engage.
He still has all his 5 senses. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So he just can't speak to you. And so it's been difficult, because like the state of Illinois, we have this thing where caregivers they're called personal assistants. We get paid.
Thank heavens. I wish we had that in Georgia. We don't have that.
We have it here in Illinois, right? And so but I get so many hours that there's like, hey, you're like wasting all these hours that you don't get to use, you know what I mean? Because I don't have another caregiver.
Oh, respite hours.
Yeah. So I'm like, I know, but like I could get someone, and I've interviewed people, and when they finally like come here, they're like, no. And also because I want people who are physically fit in the way, and you can't say that, are you physically fit? Because you have to be, like we put Nick on the stander, which is like this, like a table that you lay someone on, and then you crank it up and then stand you up. And it's so he gets, some good pressure on his bones and muscles. And so he, stays healthy, and his lymph system's moving and all the things. But that takes effort to get him on there, and also make sure he's okay, and then work with him while he's doing that. And if he has like any kind of episode, meaning like he starts coughing, or he's, anything that's riles him up, you have to like hold him and all that stuff. So
and work it out. Yeah.
Work it out. Exactly. And that's something people freak out. Even when I brought physical therapist in my own home, it's rare that I have someone that will do that. So yeah, so that's the challenge. And I have looked for places for Nick to live if I ever leave the earth, because I just need to have a plan,
I was thinking about this question, and I thought, I don't know, that's pretty.
Yes. And Nick knows. We've talked about it. Like he knows. His sister isn't capable of taking care of him. That's what she has said at this moment, because they're both the same, they're twins. And so we're trying to have like a place. And so I've looked at, like I told you, looked at nursing homes, and I was like, no. There's a place here called Misericordia, which is that's been around for 60 years, that are for disabled adults. And disabilities, meaning everything from Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, certain kind of brain injuries and stuff. And I've been in conversation with them, but because of the short staff thing, it's iffy. I flew out to California, where actually my daughter lives in LA, and there's a place there called Ryan's Reach, which was started by Pat Boone's granddaughter, because his grandson fell through a skylight and has a traumatic brain injury. And so it's called Ryan. His name is Ryan, and it's called Ryan's Reach. And I went there, and it's actually a couple group homes that have only 4 people in it, each thing. And that's the closest that I've come to finding a place
Of like that's going to give you peace. To know he's. I mean, it's not the same, but in a similar way, my brother is neurodivergent, born with a developmental intellectual disability, totally verbal, but it is hard to find the right fit for him. Like he's, he's either and with people who he doesn't have a lot in common with. It's frustrating at the same, but we think about that as well. In my family, my parents are deceased, and if something happens to us, like what will happen?
What's the plan? Right.
What's the plan? And you do have to have those conversations. Your videos on social media, and of course we'll link to everything at the end, but for those of you that are trying to kind of, are you working this care economy, or are you also caring for somebody with a brain injury? Lisa's doing a lot to help normalize the conversations that your life is still valuable when you're not, nonverbal, but it doesn't mean you're non-communicating.
Right.
And I think your videos really highlight that. So I encourage people to go out. But why is that important for you to do that?
Well, what's so amazing is that Nick's taught me about your soul. Like I always thought about, your soul, like what the essence of you. And when I learned about brain injury, when Nick started, when he had his brain injury, and I started really researching about brain injury and our brains, and how we're just really an electrical system. And that there's this girl that I follow who has a brain injury just from walking her dog, and she slipped on ice and she hit her head. And from that moment, she isn't able to work. And it's not like she still walks and talks and does all the things, but her brain is not the same. Or football players with CTE, that's because, the electrical, like getting hit, it's an electrical pathway that gets interrupted, and then it totally changes you. And so we're literally like one little boop on our head. We're different people, 100%.
Yeah.
And so I'm so like fascinated about that. And then I realized that the essence of Nick, like when I'm with him, his pure essence, like there's no denying it's Nick, like even his friends who come and visit him, they can sit with him, and all of a sudden something will happen, a joke will happen, and then Nick will respond in his own way, like by kicking his leg up or moving his arm, and they're like, dude, like we know, like, yeah, it's Nick, what I mean? He's so funny.
Yes.
And then I was like, that's the thing, man. We are so attached to our physical bodies and like what we're, what all of us, like what we present to the world, but our souls are 100% intact. And I think that's the biggest gift that I've had, and when I do meditation, I'm a meditation, well, I'm trained to be instructor, but like I use meditation in my life.
Yeah. For yourself.
And,
what does your meditation look like? Because I know everybody's looks a little different.
Oh yeah. I mean, I just, I have a seated practice, like every day I just, do like a breath work or some kind of centering prayer or something, but a lot of times I do like even mantra, ohms and, just different mantras. And when I do that, Nick participates, and I'm like, okay, see, like energetically, he's aligned, like he does things.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is that, while I was doing the Inspiration Cafes, I've been a massage therapist because I never took a salary from Inspiration Cafes. It was just like my
Mission.
Yeah, to do it. But my job was a massage therapist. And in massage therapy, one of the things I learned was being a massage, like an infant massage instructor. And so when I became an infant massage instructor, one of the things that you do is that I never touched the baby. I only instructed the parent how to touch the baby. So I had like a doll to show what to do. So the parent, because it's a bonding thing with the parent.
Sure.
And every time before you do a massage on an infant, you put your hands up and you ask permission. And this is a little tiny baby. You obviously can't talk, and you say, I'm going to massage you. Are you okay? And you can tell by the way they look and how they engage if they're ready. And then you tell them, I'm going to touch your foot. I'm going to move, and you say it. The exact thing that I learned, all the cues happen with Nick. And then when I did research, I found out that you heal when you have a brain injury from your infant state. All your primal reflexes, all the things that babies do, like if you touch their cheek and they root, if you touch their foot a certain way, that's how your body heals. It goes backwards
Mm.
that way. I find that so
It's
fascinating
fascinating. Yes.
and amazing. And then I had to find doctors that believed in that, and like that's where we're at. So yeah, so it's been like a incredible and
I'm
journey.
grateful. Yeah, I'm grateful that
Yeah,
you've got the tools through this prior business that you had, through the
right.
masseuse and the meditation. Like you came into the caregiving role with definitely some real awesome self-care tools,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yes.
And I think that's great. And we're going to
Yeah.
link to the Inspiration Corp and all that and some of the other things you said. So let's talk about joy, because like we
Yeah.
talked about a lot of heavy stuff. Like
Yeah.
how do you and Nick infuse some joy into your caregiving life?
Anything in nature. Anything in nature. We go to professional baseball, not like not like
The Cubs,
not like the Cubs. Like whatever it is, like the minor
minor
league.
league. Yeah, minor
It's like
league.
it's called something, or National League or something. Anyways, it's a local team that we go to, and they have this really great handicap accessible feature. It's called the Schaumburg Boomers. It's Schaumburg is a little
Yep.
a
The
suburban,
suburb.
suburb, and it's the Schaumburg Boomers, and I love them. And we go to baseball games in the summer, and we go nature walks, botanic garden. We have a beautiful garden here, called the Botanical Garden, like the Chicago Botanic Garden. It's insane, beautiful. We go for walks, like that kind of stuff.
Nature's super healing.
Nature is super healing. It was so healing for me is that I actually just got certified to become a horticultural therapist.
Yeah,
So
what is that?
yeah, so that's where you use plant activities. Well, first of all, there's different ones. There's therapeutic horticulture and horticultural therapists. They're the same
Mm.
genre, but the way that you use it. So there's some that work in hospitals and nursing homes, and they work with teams of physical therapists, OT, PT, mental health, social workers, and you create plant projects, like even repotting a plant. Like like an example would be someone, you're going to be in a dementia care ward with, and you're working with the social workers there. And so you are just replanting, like, say, geraniums, and you start having a conversation with the person that you're working with about when what was your childhood flowers, like what did you have in your childhood, because like long-term memory is something that they
Yes.
and they
That you
start
can make a
talking about.
connection.
Right, roses, or geraniums, or like what do you love about them, what the colors, and you just engage. And while they're doing that, you can even have them standing, so it's balance work. If you're having a standing table when you're repotting, the scents, if you bring in scents, if there was roses, if you just have essential oils and be like, oh, do you remember this scent, lavender, anything kind of engaging, engages your brain, engages conversation. And the social worker is there too, observing to see like where they
Mm.
are in their progress, or someone who has a stroke and they can't use maybe their right arm, but there's tools that are like grippers, there's ways that you can
Yes.
go around your arm, and there's grippers, and you also get them maybe standing up sometime, and they don't even realize they're doing balance work because they're standing, that they use these grippers, and you're just in a conversation, whatever you're doing, it's just
It's therapy without them knowing they're having therapy.
exactly.
So that's the horticulture therapy?
Yeah, that's
Yes.
that's a therapeutic horticulture.
Therapeutic horticulture. Got it.
Yeah, and so and then a horticultural therapist works like I'm an independent and on my own, and uh I would work with, like, I want to work with kids. Like, I work with neighborhood kids now, just in our neighborhood, and we do projects where we did like we painted birdhouses, and we looked up the birds, and then we did this like take a whisk, and you put like all kinds of material for nesting in it, like
Mm.
that. we planted a pizza garden this summer, which was super fun, which means
What
like
is that?
tomatoes, oregano, like whatever you put in a pizza, right? And you plant the garden like that, and it's just in a like a round pizza, so like each section you have that in there. And we've done wreaths together where you take, flowers, and we do these little tiny baby, they're called Tussie Mussies. They're from way back in the 20s, in 1920s, where these like tiny little bouquets that women used to wear and hold. And so you can just do like, because they're miniature. Everybody likes to do mini things, fun things. And I work with like kids like that, and I like it because well, first of all, I didn't know I was going to love working with little kids. Which is crazy. Because I always did stuff like that. I homeschooled our kids, Emily and Nick, for a while, for a couple of years, and I had a blast doing that. So I guess I already had an innate thing,
like a teaching
yeah,
thing.
but I didn't think that I didn't know that was my thing. And so I've been working with people, and then I worked with, for my final project for school, I worked with people who were homebound, online, and we did here they are. These are wildflower seed balls. Do you see them at all?
Yeah.
And so what we do is you take air dry clay, and then you flatten it out, and then you take wildflowers from from where you are. So I would take Midwest wildflowers and South wildflowers, and
Yes,
sprinkle them in there, and then you close it up, and then they air dry, and then you whip these into wherever you want them. You know what I mean? You could plant them just nice, but I like the story about seed bombs is that, especially in Chicago, is that there was a group they're called guerrilla gardeners. On the south side of Chicago, there was a lot of empty lots, and there was a lot of like drug dealing and gang things happening, and people were like just treating the empty lots just like as a garbage pit, and the neighbors didn't want that anymore. And so the city wasn't moving quick enough. So what they did was they started cleaning up the empty lots, and then the city would put fences around, and they couldn't have access to the lots. So the people would create these
I love it.
and they would whip them over the fence, and they would create flowers in the empty lots. And so that's where the guerrilla gardening came. But this is really great because it's dexterity work,
Yes.
You get to talk about the wildflowers. It's all about education, and it's just kind of
reminding you of playing Play-Doh when you were little.
Yes.
I love the connection. And I don't know if you're familiar, and maybe that you would even like, it was created with more of a dementia person in mind, but there's a partner I've worked with before called Connectivities Box that does like a monthly subscription box.
I won one.
Yes.
And
what did you think?
Yes. That's exactly like it.
Yeah. I mean, they don't just do horticulture things, but I really give them props for like putting some really cool stuff and some thought into those
the little
boxes.
hockey game, and all kinds of fun stuff.
Yes. And then I wanted to ask you about the kids. So like you're having kids come over. Are you exposing them to Nick too? Because what a cool
Nick's
thing.
with us. Yeah. And it's what's interesting is, and I had to be open-hearted enough to accept this, that some children are afraid of Nick.
They'll say the darndest things, like they do.
Yeah, I don't mind them talking like that, but they're like super afraid. They get super afraid. And then I was like, oh, but then we have conversations. I'm like, hey, he has a chair with wheels on it. You know what I mean? It's kind of cool. You can whip around, and we talk about just about like how he eats, because Nick eats through a tube in his stomach and things like that. The only thing I don't really share with them much is about how he got sick, because I don't want kids to think that they're going to get a virus and then it happen, because how in your mind you think, what do you mean he just had a
then they hear mom and dad had a virus,
and then their mom's calling me like, my kid can't sleep, you know what I mean? So I'm like, no. So I just say like, oh, Nick just had an accident, and I just leave it like that, like just hit an accident. And I tell the parents, no, if they want to share, that's that's their thing. I just don't want to like freak a kid out. Yeah. Because because
Nick's agreeing with you, I think. Yeah.
yeah, Nick's twin sister, she totally, Emily, that would have been it. If Emily learned that when she was little, she would have came home and told me. Anytime she got sick, she'd be like, Mom, like, is something gonna
Yeah.
happen to me? That she would be that person.
Yeah. Well, what a gift that you're giving them, the gift obviously of the horticulture therapy, but then you're giving them this little side gift of like exposing them to caregiving and exposing them to Nick, who's in a chair, and what that all entails.
Yes.
I think
And
it's having more of an impact than you probably know.
I hope so. The other way I expose Nick to the community at large is I teach fitness classes, and I haven't done it since COVID now, but right before COVID, I was teaching fitness classes at a facility that served older adults, and but I told them that I couldn't have the job because they knew me from, I worked there for them before Nick's brain injury. And then after Nick's brain injury, they were like, hey, would you, come back? And I was like, yeah, but Nick has to be with me. And they're like, okay. And so Nick would be in the gym with me, and I'd be teaching like a Zumba class or, some kind of dance fitness thing or weights, and Nick would be in there. And that was a really interesting experience because these are older adults that are, when you get older, there's a lot of ageism and you become invisible, and they're not really feeling seen or heard, and the fitness class was bringing community together, and we're doing something helpful. But then Nick brought like, I don't know, like an awareness, like their life was really a lot more blessed than they knew.
Yeah, I get to do this. I get to get up and
exactly.
Go to Zumba today. Yes.
Exactly.
I mean, I felt like that with my mom was bedridden the last 2 years, and I was like, look, I am not complaining about. I was just thinking about it even last night, like how I get to reposition myself in the bed, like,
right,
like, yeah,
it's just standing up. You're just like, I could stand up. I could use my fingers. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Lots of gratitude things there, for sure, Lisa. And speaking of gratitude, and because this is a time of thing, you might like this horticulture therapy idea of getting a pumpkin and turning it into a gratitude pumpkin, where you get a Sharpie and you write one thing on the pumpkin that you're grateful for, and then you'll have a Thanksgiving centerpiece.
And then when and you can
swirl it around it.
No, like where you cut open the top and you scoop out the seeds. Then you could put a plant inside there. A mom.
Oh, look at you. Baby. Way to elevate it. Way to elevate that. I love that. So cool. Don't carve it till you're ready to display your mom.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because if you carve it now and then do your gratitude thing, it's going to be like yucky, a mushy pot. But I love that. So, because again, that kind of goes with that gratitude practice. Well, I love that. Tell us. Let's get into the journal. Our time is flying by, Lisa. Yeah. So, but I did want to say too, you've influenced me because you did a little clip on we've been doing these collaborative real self-care tips, because I'm really interested in like, what are caregivers really doing to infuse self-care into their lives and not shoulding all over them, SHOULD. And one of your tips was about the basil, and I have my Aero garden, and my basil is out of control. Like I can't use it to cook with it fast enough. So I've been clipping it, and I've been doing your rubbing and smelling it.
Isn't it beautiful?
It's beautiful. And then I take it and I put it in my garbage disposal, and it makes my garbage disposal smell amazing.
That's a really smart thing.
Yeah, because then it's like, what do you do with the title? Like,
because I've done it with lemon, but I've never done it with
And I'm inside. Like my Aero garden is just an indoor thing.
Yeah, that's cool.
And the Aero garden is a really cool thing, because I was talking to coaching someone yesterday, and their mom is feeling sad and isolated. She's an older adult where she lives. And I said, what did she like to do before she moved into assisted living? She said, she was really into gardening. And I said, well, do they have a garden there? And she said, no, they don't have one. I said, well, maybe they could start one. I said, but in the meantime, there's this thing, like at least you get a little bit of, bringing that gardening indoors.
I do that with microgreens with people.
Yes.
Microgreens are really, really easy to grow, and they're really good for you as a person eating it. And yeah, anything green and growing, it's good.
Into some of that stuff when we get there. Okay, so the Just For You Daily Self-Care Journal, this is a book I wrote. We're going to do a lightning round of it where whatever comes into your mind is the right answer, Lisa.
Okay. Woo, lightning round.
Lightning round. Okay, what is one self-care activity that you could do while you're waiting for something to happen? Like waiting in a line, waiting for an appointment.
I'm actually, because I'm married to a librarian and also love books, I always have books with me. I have books with me. And so I'm that weirdo that has like a book in my backpack and I read. Yeah.
Yes. Have you read anything good lately? I got to ask.
Well, yes. I mean, but I usually read, like about permaculture and
Okay.
you know what I mean? Gardening and things like
yes,
that.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Good to know. I also am a big reader. I love it. It's a great escape. Okay. What?
And actually go to the library, you know what I mean? To get books.
I just went yesterday. I didn't get books, but I had to renew my library card. I'm a Libby audiobook listener.
Yeah.
I always have a paperback going, but I like to go to this used bookstore and get them and then gift them to somebody. But Libby is an app that people can get, and all they need is a library card. And I'm like, this is the most underutilized place in the library. Like, go
100%,
here.
100%.
Yeah. Yes. It's free.
I know that.
You can't beat free. What's something that you were afraid to do and did it anyway?
Catheter Nick. Sorry. That's what
yes.
Yes. Having to do a straight cath on Nick. That was and a nurse she coached me through, and she would not let me fail. She was just like, no, you have to do it like this. Yes. And she's just doing it like, we're going to do it this way. We're going to do this way. And we did it. And it was the game changer. Yeah.
I'm so glad that she was the person that was showing you how to do that. Okay. Let's see. This might be the last one here. What are you looking forward to doing this week?
Oh, this week. Well, my 35th wedding anniversary is on Sunday.
Congrats.
Yeah, thanks. So we usually go to a local restaurant that we know the owners, and they love Nick. And so
what is it? We're gonna plug it.
It's called the Candlelight Chicago.
Yum.
It's on Western and Howard. Yep. And in Rogers Park. And it's been around for over 40 years. It's a pizza joint. But it has regular food too, burgers and all kinds of stuff. But they're known for their pizza, and because it's Chicago pizza.
But it should
It's thin. But they have a Detroit one too there. That's a thicker pizza in case people want thick pizza.
Yes, I had a meetup recently when I went up to Chicago with a couple folks, caregiving folks. Chris McCabe from Life with Grams, and Joe and Bella's, one of the band from Joe and Bella. I'm like, oh, and some other folks. And we were talking about how Chicago pizza is not the deep dish pizza with all the sauce.
Well, we do have deep dish, the Malnati's. Yes. The Malnati.
But they really feel like Chicago pizza is what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's definitely a debate. Just like our two baseball teams, the White Sox and the Cubs. It's a huge debate. If you say
who has the best hot dog, I'm sure that's a debate.
All the same. Yeah, it's a debate. So
those are the kind of debates that I would like to be a part of, though. I don't like these other debates going on in the world today. Like, let's talk hot dogs and pizza and baseball, people. Wouldn't the world be better if we were just debating on all of that? Well, Lisa, you and Nick, thank you, Nick, for allowing your mom this space to.
Here, I'm going to show Nick at the end here, right?
Okay.
So you guys can
see. And can he hear me, Lisa?
Yeah.
Hey, Nick, I'm Elizabeth, and your mom and I have known each other for a while. Thank you so much for giving your mom the space to share both of your stories today on the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast. You're going to enlighten a lot of people. So thank you.
Yeah. There you go.
I'm grateful for you, Lisa.
I'm grateful for you too. Thank you for this
Yes.
opportunity.
And just to wrap it all up, instead of folks saying, I don't know how you do it, instead say, Lisa, you are a remarkable human being, and Nick is pretty cool. And those are the kinds of comments that I'm sure Lisa would and Nick would like to hear the next time that you encounter them.
Yes. And also, like, how are you feeling today, like this day?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, just at this moment, because I know that it just like in people who are grieving, you know, they have different times when they're not feeling steady, and sometimes they are. Like, so I say, how are you feeling today?
Day. And
Yeah.
how do people stay connected with you, Lisa? Like, what's the best way to get in touch with you? If someone hearing your story, they want to reach out, they want to learn more about the stuff that you do with horticulture, or
Yep.
how.
I have Instagram. It's LISA.NIGRO. That's Lisa Nigro, you know, like that, Lisa.Nigro. But I also have my other one for caregiving naturally. That's an Instagram too, and you can reach me there. I'm on Facebook too, but I'm not really a Facebook type of person. So
Yeah, me neither.
yeah,
I'm
so
on it, but I don't love it.
yeah,
And
and
then
I
you
used to
have a
have
website, Lisa.
Oh yeah, on my website, yeah, because it's a landing page, and I don't think of it as a website. You know what I mean? It does tell my story though, and you can get a hold of me that way. So it is, yeah. So it's
Lisa-Nigro.com.
yeah.
Doesn't get easier than that.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Lisa, for everything that
Thank
you've
you.
shared today. You have enlightened me in so many ways, and you've definitely elevated my love for nature even more. So thank you so
Hey.
much for spending this time with me today.
Okay, send me a picture of your pumpkin.
Yes, likewise. Let's do our gratitude pumpkins.
Yes.
All right, take care. Thanks for joining us today on the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast on the Whole Care Network. As always, show notes that accompany today's episode can be found on my website, happyhealthycaregiver.com. Just look under the podcast menu for today's episode image, and that will take you to the page with the links and information we spoke about today. You'll also find other resources on the website, along with links to purchase the Just For You Daily Self-Care Journal. When you purchase from my website, you'll get a signed copy, and for a limited time, free shipping. If you've enjoyed what you heard today, consider subscribing to the show on your podcast platform. It really helps other family caregivers find the podcast, and you'll automatically receive our bi-weekly shows in your podcast listening queue. Maybe while you're subscribing, consider leaving a 5-star rating and review, or just simply talk it up on your social channels. Let's stay connected. I'm on Instagram and Facebook as Happy Healthy Caregiver. And until we meet again, please take care of you.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.